sometimes you don't know what's going on behind the scenes of somebody you followed in sports for a long period of time. And today I get to talk to Nick Schlekeway, who played football for Boise State University and played at a local high school here in Idaho. And I never understood what happened after football. So today we get to learn about his whole journey at Boise State, some of the biggest games he was part of. Oklahoma, the BCS game. He was on the defensive line playing in that game. And we get to hear about that. We get to hear about all the ups and downs of his journey through college. But what also is a very intriguing point, which I hope you guys stay tuned towards the end of the interview, is learning about his journey after football. And when football was over and the identity crisis that he went through and the emotional turmoil that he went through, but how he continued to keep fighting and was here for a reason. See, I think a lot of people go through these experiences where they lose their identity once the sport is over, because that consumes a big part of their life. And then when it's over, they don't know what to do. Well, Nick struggled with that, and he's going to share with us his journey after football. So I really hope you guys take notes on this podcast and listen and see how he's been able to build a successful business and what he's doing now to thrive and provide value back into the community and to other people around him. So stay tuned. This is the Gametime Guru. So,
what time is it? Game time! Woo!
This is the Gametime Guru podcast, where I interview sports figures from all over the world to help deliver a panoramic view on sports. So whether you're a former athlete, one of the crazies, or simply a casual sports fan, this is the perfect show for you as we peel back the curtains and learn from our guests every single week. I'm your host, Shane Larson, and I'm helping you see sports through a different lens. What's up, everybody? Welcome out to another episode of the Gametime Guru podcast. Shane Larson here, host of the show. We are now on to year 10 of this podcast. Guys, thanks for tuning in over the years. We started this in 2017, so year 9's completed. We're now into year 10, January. Super excited to bring on our guests and continue on with this journey. Now, as you guys heard in the intro, what we're doing with the podcast is we're expanding. So stay on the lookout for. We have a children's series coming out for books that I've learned, like that I'm going to be utilizing, that are inspired by some of the stories that we've had on this podcast over the last 9 years. And we're going to be having some awesome content on a YouTube platform and some parents' workbooks. So there's a lot of projects coming in the works for the Gametime Guru and the entire platform. So stay tuned for more on that front. But awesome opportunity today, you guys. As you heard in the intro, super cool chance for me. It's cool to talk to a former Boise State football player who has utilized some of these skill sets that he learned throughout his football career, his athletics journey, into his professional career now. And his name is Nick Schlekeway. So, Nick, thanks for joining the show, brother.
Thanks, man. Hey, I appreciate you pronouncing my last name correctly, too. You're right on.
it was tough, but, man. Nick, I want to, before we start kind of unpacking what you're doing for your professional career right now, let's rewind the clock a little bit, kind of talk about, before even the college football experiences that you had, like, talk about your athletic journey as a kid. Like, at what point did you start taking part in athletics when you were younger?
Man, since I was as young as I can remember, I wanted to, get involved in athletics in some way. I didn't know when or where. And in fact, a funny story is I tried soccer for a couple of years. So, when I was growing up around here, you could start playing flag football, I think, when you were 7. So I played soccer when I was 5, 6. Hated it. I hated it with a passion, as you can probably imagine. And then the second I stepped foot on a football field, I loved it. But I played baseball when I was a kid too. I played baseball up until I was a freshman in high school. I used to joke that I probably should have kept playing baseball. I think I was probably a better baseball player than I was a football player from a skill set standpoint. But mentally, I was 100% a football player and a defensive lineman. The way I approached athletics, it was kind of max aggression and try to bowl my way through things. So that doesn't serve you very well playing baseball. But I just, from a tool set standpoint, I was really good third baseman and I hit cleanup. So I was kind of sad to see baseball go when I was in high school. But at sports that has gotten so competitive, and it's even more that way now. Wow, the stories I hear from kids now are crazy about the specialization that takes place. But yeah, for me, I just started focusing on football in high school, but I had a brief run with soccer for 2 years.
Oh man, the soccer thing, I hear you on that. I never did soccer, but I was the same. I was football and basketball focused growing up forever. And dude, there's just no way I couldn't have done soccer. I just couldn't have done it. I'm surprised to hear that actually, but it's kind of cool. That's a unique little thing. So,
Yeah.
um, growing up in the Treasure Valley, talk to me about like your football experience there. Did you play Optimist? I'm assuming it was Optimist football
Yeah.
back then and so forth. What was your thoughts on that? Because you did mention like now as a parent myself, like I got a 9-year-old who's playing 7-on-7. He's going into the clubs side of football instead of the Optimist side of football. It's a little different.
Yeah.
It's evolved a little bit, but I want
Yeah.
to know what your thoughts were on the Optimist football side of things growing up.
So I had a pretty good experience. So the first year I played tackle in Optimist, I was, what, 9, 8, 9, and didn't have a great experience with that. It was on a team that, I don't know, I just didn't really mesh with some of the kids and the coach. And so we moved to a different Optimist team, and it was actually sponsored by Idaho Sporting Goods, if you remember ISG. And I loved it. I got in with this great group of coaches. In fact, they were all firefighters, and that was proved to be very influential and impactful in my life. I later became a firefighter after college, and a big reason was these guys that coached us. So we had a couple guys that had played, D1 ball, and then everybody was just kind of athletic, and it was like this group of 30, 40-year-old Boise Fire guys that like decided they wanted to coach football. And we had a great sponsor. So I spent 4 years, I think 3 or 4 years with ISG, and dude, I loved it. So they didn't have that big Optimist facility that they built off Hill Road. We played all of our games at Capitol High School. And so Optimist football it was pretty small. We practiced at Lowell Scott. We played our games at Capitol High. There was no like gigantic Optimist facility, but I had a lot of fun playing Optimist ball. I really did, and had just great men, and honestly, some that would turn out to be mentors for me in life.
Oh, that's super cool. And it's interesting. I want the people who are listening in the Valley, like I know the show's been heard all over the world and it's downloaded everywhere, but I have a lot of listeners here in the area, just naturally from being local here. And this is what I try to tell people. I also played Optimist, and I was part of that transition. My 2 years of flag, and then my first year of tackle was at Capitol High School. And then I was part of the transition over to the place over at Hill Road. But even now, compared to then, like it's crazy how much it's expanded over there and now it's in Nampa too. Like there's all this Optimist is everywhere. But like the Hill Road location, that big facility out there is like massive now because like
Yeah.
they've turned into a ton of different
Yeah.
fields and stuff. And it's just crazy to see how it's evolved. But I too had a pretty good experience back there. I think it's cool what you mentioned about your coaches. I feel like football at that age, like it can like really set the foundation. Now, did you end up ever playing middle school football as well, Nick, or did you go just Optimist and then go into high school? I didn't know how your age broke down.
I
So,
did. Yeah. So I actually played 2 years for Eagle Middle.
okay.
And I had a pretty good experience there too. I mean, middle school, junior high, it's tough. It's a tough age to be a kid. It's a tough age to be a coach. It's hard to find good coaches, but I think I had pretty good coaches there, and I had a good experience. We won a lot of games. That's something I would say about my football career is, I was so blessed. Like I just always was on winning teams. We won a ton in Optimist. We won a lot at Eagle Middle. I went to Eagle High and won a state championship. And obviously, I won a lot at Boise State. Like I was very blessed that way. I always was on winning teams.
Yeah, you knew how to win, which is one of the topics I wanted to kind of point out today too. So let's talk about Eagle High School. So I graduated in 2006, but I remember playing you guys, and I believe it was your senior year, if I'm not mistaken. Were you 04?
Yeah, I graduated in 04. Yep.
So I'm pretty sure it was the 03-04 season. Our team was terrible that year. We had no offensive line, and I am pretty positive you either had multiple sacks or like you were in the backfield every time against us. And I remember your name. It was like Schlekeway, and they were like, "That's the Boise State commit." Da, 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 da. Dude, our line was awful. I mean, 2 years later, my senior year, we won state, but like we were terrible. Like we were just atrocious, and you were solid. Talk to us about your high school experience, because I want to let the younger athletes know like what it was taking. Like what was your routine like back then? Naturally, you're gifted as far as physical talents and just like your stature, but you had to put in work because people couldn't block you, dude. So like what were you doing on a day-to-day basis to be able to play at that level?
Yeah, so growing up like Optimist and middle school, and then my freshman year at Eagle High, I always played fullback, tight end, and then on defense I'd play like linebacker. Well, then dude, always this is a lifelong memory for me. It was our football camp. At Eagle High, I was a sophomore. I was going into my sophomore year, and our head coach at the time for a varsity, Mike Glenn, ran across the field to grab me out of the sophomore practice. It was like the second day of camp, and they pulled me down to play with the varsity squad. And I always remember our coach at the time was a guy named Jim Sini, who I like Jim a lot. He was a great coach, but I still remember how pissed he was. I just remember like looking over my shoulder when I was like running over to the varsity group and seeing he was like kicking the dirt. He was all mad, and I still didn't know what the hell was going on. I was like, why are they grabbing me? Well, they were pulling me up to varsity, but they threw me in at D tackle. And I had played, like I said, fullback, linebacker. I hadn't played on the D line very much at all. And they just, saw something. I mean, what they saw was my motor and my aggression and like how I approached the game. And they had a hole at D tackle that year on varsity. And so here I was, like 205 pounds, soaking wet, sophomore, getting thrown in there, and our offensive line that year, they were monsters. Like, so we had like two or three guys off the starting five that year. That was the year we won state. So my sophomore year at Eagle High, I ended up making varsity, starting at defensive tackle as a sophomore, weighing 205, but we were undefeated, and actually, dropped like 50 points on Highland in the state championship game. Didn't even come close really to losing that year, and we're ranked like in the top 100 in the country. I mean, we had like 11 or 12 guys off the starting 22, and that team played college football. We were just absolutely stacked. But I was like this young kid on that team, so I had to grow up quick. And we had guys like Drew Larona was our starting offensive tackle. The dude was like 6'4", 320. So they pull me down there, and I that's when I started getting concussions, frankly. I mean, I know not to take the story in a different direction, but I never really got damaged playing football until I was a sophomore on varsity, and I earned my stripes playing D tackle. There's no doubt about that. It was like a meat grinder. But man, I was a tough guy, tough kid, strong. I started really hitting the weights heavy, like my 8th grade year, like going into my 9th grade year. So but I was always a hard gainer, and it was frustrating. They put me at D line because it was so hard for me to put on weight. I mean, that was the thing about high school. I'll tell you, is like it was a constant battle to try to gain weight. I mean, I was constantly like bringing boiled eggs and protein shakes and protein bars and eating all day long. And dude, you remember back in the day, we're talking about like Muscle Blast and Metrix bars. Like
Yeah, dude.
this stuff tasted like shit. Like, like
Terrible.
it was brutal trying to put weight on back then. You look at the ingredients on some of this stuff, it either tasted horrible or it was just like pure sugar. Like you might as well just eat candy bars. But that high school was constantly lifting, constantly eating. And our head coach, Mike Glenn, was big on weights and had his own weight training program. And he had actually built a weight room out with his own blood, sweat, and tears, like on his own dime. Eagle High didn't even really have a weight room until that guy came along. I mean, he really made that program and was just like a football guy through and through. So that sophomore year was a big deal for me. It was gut check time, and hey, Mike saw something in me, and it worked out. And we were 12-0 state champs. It's like I'll always remember riding back from Pocatello on the bus being state champs. Like there's nothing like it.
That is super cool. One of the things you just mentioned was Jim Sini. Was that the videography, like the teacher for the film place?
Yeah,
Yeah, dude. So
yeah,
I went to Eagle my freshman year, and I remembered that guy. Like, that's so funny. Like, it's so interesting, man. It's like a small world. I was like, Jim Sini, that sounds familiar.
yeah. Jim was a funny dude, and I don't know, you either liked him or you didn't. I liked him a lot. So yeah.
Oh, it's so interesting. So cool to hear those names too. And then Mike Glenn, of course. Yeah, just Coach Glenn. That's so cool, man. Um, what is your favorite memory from that team as far as the state championship? Because not everybody gets an opportunity to win a state championship, but do you have like a favorite memory from that team specifically?
Ooh, man, that's tough. There was a lot. I mean, any state championship team, obviously you got really good chemistry. You get along with each other. You got to have some kind of chemistry, or you don't have that kind of success. So there's a lot of good memories from that season. I mean, I would have to say probably just in the locker room after winning the game, on the field after winning the game, and like some of the Glenn was awesome. Mike Glenn had the greatest stories. I mean, who knows how many of them were true, but he was just like one of those just classic old school football coaches that say, they say things that don't even make sense. You're like, what does that mean? It doesn't matter what it means. It still fires you up. Half the stories probably aren't true. They're probably all exaggerated. But that guy had some classic stories. I remember doing our pregame meal before the state championship game, and he just had this story about he was hiking up to a lookout with his wife, and they got snowed on and got cold, and turned around and went back. And then he asked somebody when he was down in the parking lot how far away he was from the top when they turned around, and they said he was only like 100 yards. And Glenn starts screaming about, I swore the rest of my life like I'd never, quit anything. Like I'd finished everything I started, and I couldn't believe I gave up. I mean, I still remember that speech to this day. If I actually took the time, I could sit down and I could probably write out half of it. And I remember a lot of that stuff that guy said. And but the feeling of, to sum that up, I would say this, like that feeling of accomplishing something like that with a group of guys, there's nothing like it. And I've won individual awards in my life, and I've always told people, like, there's nothing like winning something as a team. Like, it's just a totally different euphoria that you feel. And then, like I said, that bus ride home was like, and you never wanted it to end. It was like the best bus ride of my life, and that's saying something coming from Pocatello in November.
Heck yeah, dude. I bet that was so cool though. But like the bus rides, I mean, that bus ride was probably so fun, dude. Just like yeah, just it's a 3.5, 4 hour bus ride coming back home from that. That would be incredible, man. Um,
Yeah, and it was like, it's something that nobody can ever take away from us. I mean, you win state, it's undeniable, and then the way we did it, being like a nationally ranked team and being undefeated, made our mark on that program for forever, and that's something that you can't have taken away from you.
that's so cool, dude. Is that the last time they've won a state championship?
They won it again. They won it. I think when Paul Peterson was their coach, I think they won state again. They've stayed really competitive. I mean, they've
They're
had.
solid. No, I know they're really good. They haven't been able to get over the hump in the last like 5 years or so since I've been following them a lot more now. But I'm just wondering,
Yeah,
I couldn't remember if they had won it before.
I think they won it one other year after that, and we had won one previous. Like the first year, the team had a program. I think it was '96, and then Glenn won a championship with them in '98, and then we won one in 2001, and then I think they won one again between now and then. I'm not sure.
So interesting. Yeah, Eagle. Good old Eagle High, man. I know that people know my opinion of that school, but hey, I got to give you respect. And I got
Well,
to give
but
you
it
respect.
changed, like, and it changed while I was there, and I don't know what your opinion is, but I can guess because I probably have the same opinion. When on that team, that those upperclassmen, when I was a sophomore, they were country boys. I mean, like, that school, those guys went to, like, we had a guy go to Air Force. We have a guy that's a full bird colonel that went to West Point. We have guys that like started their own construction company. I mean, those were like blue collar, hard working dudes. After that, like, the makeup of that school changed big time.
Yeah, it was a unique place to be. I'll just say that because I'm a Meridian High grad. I lived 5 minutes away from Meridian High School, 20 minutes from Eagle, but because of the boundaries that year, the year I went there as a freshman, I was forced to go there because Mountain View was being built. Meridian was overcrowded. Eagle was overcrowded. Everybody was overcrowded. And so, yeah, my first year was over there and I freaking hated that school so much. There's a lot of reasons I didn't like it. All my friends were at
Yeah.
Meridian. I was over there, but there's a unique group of
So
people.
you probably went to school with some of my family. All of my family went to Meridian High, but you probably remember what Meridian High's football team was like at the time. And
Oh,
I wanted
terrible at the
not, yeah,
time.
and I wanted nothing to do with that. So my experience at Eagle was unique because, dude, outside of the football program, I did not like that school. I
Oh, that's
didn't.
so interesting.
But I was kind of like in this little, we were all like Mike Glenn's, like, little microcosm of this world that, like, Mike Glenn had created with going to football fitness at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and like,
Football fitness, dude. They had specific fitness classes for it.
yeah,
That's so dope.
yeah, yeah. Like, he created this world, and actually they wound up running him out of there because they were very pissed off and jealous, and they didn't like all the influence that he had at the school. And we would all run into a burning building for the guy. But yeah, it was unique. Like, if I wasn't an athlete, I would not have. I mean, I hate to say this, but I would not have gone to school there. I'm not trying to bash Eagle High, but yeah, I wouldn't have went there if it wasn't for sports.
So interesting, man. Yeah, that is a surprise, to be honest. I didn't know that. But so Nick, as you decided to go over
Well,
to
let me. I'll
oh
tell you one
yeah,
more
go
thing
ahead.
on that. You'll find that I almost left.
Really?
So going into my senior year, Glenn was thinking about leaving, and I was going to transfer to wherever he went. And I'll
Oh,
this is how crazy I was about football. I'll give you this to your audience. There was a chance that Mike was going to take a job at Highland and coach there, and I was going to move to Pocatello and rent an apartment in Pocatello my senior year and go to Highland High School.
wow, man.
I was
That's
this
crazy.
close.
That's how much of a leader he was, though, because he was super influential. Obviously, impacted your life in a
Yep.
very positive way. That's crazy, man. That's cool though. So as you were getting ready to go to Boise State, right? So you're going to a local school here, Boise State. For those who are listening around the country, Smurf Turf, Boise State University. You guys know who they are by now. That's also my alma mater. So, what was the biggest transition going from a program? I mean, you won a state championship at one point in your high school career, played at a high level with a great coach, had some impactful leaders, impactful teammates. But what was the biggest transition going from that to the Division I football level?
It's the speed of the game, and
Okay.
I think that's always the biggest thing when you go from level to level. And I never played professionally. I tried, didn't make it. We can get to that, but that's also the next jump up is like the game just keeps getting faster and faster. And so yeah, like Mike's at we were like third. We sucked my junior year at Eagle High, and my senior year we won third in state. Had a good season. Story I always like to tell is I was just an extremely aggressive player. I mean, I played right on the line of getting a lot of I didn't get a lot of personal fouls, but I got some. I usually knew right when to dial it back. But Boise State and Oregon had their football camp the same week.
Ah,
And Oregon actually, in a lot of ways, started expressing interest in me like before Boise State did when I was in high school. So I was trying to decide, but by this time they were both interested. So I went to Oregon's camp for the first 2 days, almost got kicked out of their camp. I got thrown on a team of renegades, and Oregon's camp was freaking massive, and it was pretty heavy to teams. There wasn't very many solo guys that they called renegades that went. And so I had there was coaches that were pissed off at me because I was playing too hard and hitting their quarterback and whatever. I mean, and I was having a horrible experience. And my dad had driven me over there and went with me. And so we were like, hey, it's Wednesday, you know, let's just leave and go catch the last 2 days of Boise State's camp. And I did. And I mean, that was one of the best decisions I ever made. I show up on Wednesday afternoon driving over from Eugene and go to Boise State's camp. And those 2 days is why I got a scholarship at Boise State. And the irony was, I took the same attitude that I was almost getting kicked out of the Oregon camp with, and I played the exact same way at Boise State. And like 3 weeks later, I get a full ride scholarship offer. So
isn't that funny, man?
yeah, like it was a very different culture to say the least.
Absolutely. So at Boise State, for any athlete, you mentioned speed of the game. When you're getting into the collegiate realm, I guess from a student perspective and just being an adult at that point, I've talked to a lot of people about this. Just like I guess they mentioned time management, making sure you're keeping up with your classes, making sure you're going to practice. Did you have any struggles with that as far as time management is concerned, going to class, or were you pretty much consistent all through high school and going into college?
I always took academics really seriously. One of the things I didn't mention is that, and most people, this kind of blows their mind. I was homeschooled until my freshman year of high school.
Cool.
I was homeschooled all the way to the point to ninth grade, and I was, my parents homeschooled me for a lot of reasons. I think culturally, religiously, they're very conservative, but also I had pretty severe ADD. If I would have been in public school, they would have wanted to medicate me. I mean, I would have been on so much, and my parents just didn't want that. I remember my mom teaching me, math while I'm basically like running circles around her around the kitchen table because I couldn't sit still when I was a kid. but I was absorbing everything. And my homeschool years actually taught me how to be like a self-starter and a self-learner, because I figured out how to just go read the lesson plan and figure things out myself. My parents certainly helped me, but by the time I was in seventh and eighth grade, I was learning a lot of it on my own. So going into public school, I just have to say, like, I couldn't believe how slow everything was. I mean, and also the curriculum I was studying in eighth grade was basically like 10th grade public school curriculum. So when I went into public school, I was like, I already learned all this a year ago. I can't believe you guys are moving this slow. And I'd sit there in the classroom, and I mean, half the time I'd be done with my homework before the lecture was even completed, because I just read ahead the night before and I already knew how to do it because I read it just like I did when I was homeschooled. In fact, a story I always tell, and I remember great teachers, and great teachers can make a difference in people's and kids' lives, and they do. My freshman year at Eagle High, my math teacher noticed that I was doing this. He noticed I was doing my homework during his lecture, and he said, "Hey," he pulled me aside afterwards. He said, "I want you to teach class tomorrow." He said, "You seem to like have a knack for this." And I was like, I was a pretty shy kid. I hadn't done much in front of people. I was a homeschool kid, and here I go to Eagle High that has like 2,300 students at the time, and now he wants me to get up in front of a class with 35 kids and like teach it. And I did it, and it was like a life changing moment for me, because I learned that like the best way to learn anything is to teach it, and I heard this the other day. I thought it was so brilliant. I'm trying to think of who said it. It was on Tucker Carlson's podcast. Might have been Ian Carroll. I don't know if that sounds right. Anyway, this guy said that teaching is sharing the spark of learning. And I just thought that was so brilliant. And that really ignited, I didn't know it at the time, but that ignited something in me for public speaking and for teaching and for coaching, because Mr. Dunn saw that and like had the courage to like let one of his students stand up in front of class and teach. And so I always tell that story because it's like I got a lot out of being homeschooled, but I think I got as much out of it as I was going to get. And now going into public school, like what an amazing opportunity to learn how to like speak in front of people and teach that I never would have gotten if I was sitting in my living room doing my math. So that's I always tell that story as a great example of what the difference teachers can make. But the speed of it. So why I started talking about that is the academic side was not a problem for me.
Yeah.
I was very much and I was a 4.0 student at Eagle High. Never got a B. In fact, I didn't get my first B academically ever until like the beginning of my sophomore year at Boise State. And my D line coach, who was a guy named Romeo Banison, was so fucking thrilled. Sorry, can I curse on your
Yeah,
podcast?
you're good. You're good, man.
He was so fucking happy that I finally got a B, that he was running around the facility at Boise State waving my test grade around, going, "He got a B, he got a B, he finally got he's not perfect." Excuse me, he finally got a B. So yeah, but I was kind of dude, I had way too many credits. So my thing at Boise State was I wanted to get all my classes done as early as possible. So I was the guy that had the 7:30 a.m. courses, and I packed my morning with classes. But my first couple semesters I took 15 and 17 credits.
Wow.
I didn't know any better, and I was a good student. So my advisor was, I did like 15 my first fall at Boise State, and I was playing on the D line as a true freshman. I didn't redshirt. I wasn't starting, but I played 20, 25 snaps a game in a three-man rotation at D tackle, and I had a 4.0 my first semester. So they were like, okay, fine, go for it. So I actually graduated in 3.5 years. I did summer school. I took 15 to 17 credits a semester. Graduated like a 3.9 whatever, not a 4.0. But
Man.
so I didn't have an issue, but it was rigorous. I will say that, like, for student athletes out there, that want to have a really high level of success in academics in college, and they want to play sports.
Mm-hmm.
Man, my day started at 6:30, and I was at class at 7:30. I had all my classes in the morning: football, weights, practice, and then I was either in the library. I was never a guy that could do my homework at my apartment. I always had to be in a study hall, a library. So I'd be there till 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, after practice doing my work, and then it would be back at it the next morning at 6:30. So it was a disciplined life at Boise State.
Man, that's awesome though. It's really cool and inspiring to like hear that because not everyone has that. I was not that kind of a student myself. That's tough, but it's really cool. If you stay structured, that's really awesome. And then the whole concept of homeschool, I'm glad you touched base on that. I'm sure there's tons of listeners that have that experience as well. It's not something that's like you shouldn't make fun of it. Like that can set a good foundation. We even homeschooled our oldest son for the first 2 years or 3 years of elementary school, and now he's going to public school right now for some other things. But we noticed that too from an academic side, he was ahead from there, and so it's interesting to kind of see how it's not always a bad thing, but and then the good teachers and just being a good leader, and that can make a difference in a kid's life. I hope people are taking notes of these things. Like if you're listening to this podcast on your device or whatever it is, take notes, use your notepad, take notes of what Nick's saying here. That's all these things are golden nuggets. During that time, I want to hear about I had Coach Dan Hawkins on my show about a year ago, sharing some experiences and so forth of like what it was like coaching there, but also throughout the rest of his coaching journey. And I'm curious, from your side, you were there during a good era of football. It was kind of like that. It started to kind of take off that hockey stick growth, so to speak, of Boise State football. There's some good, successful years. Obviously, the Fiesta Bowl being one of them. But I want to know, were you part of the? So maybe that was the same year, yeah, when we played Oregon State at home. Well, I'm wondering, was that the same year? Like,
Yeah. So my freshman year, we were undefeated, and we played Louisville in the Liberty Bowl.
okay,
We
Avalos had that pick, and like,
Avalos had that pick, and then he almost died of a heart attack because he got so gassed. But that year, I've always told people, like, in terms of maximizing output with very limited talent, I thought we did more my freshman year than even when we beat Oklahoma, because we had some serious talent that that year that we beat Oklahoma. My freshman year, we were ranked like number 11, and came this close to beating Louisville in that game, and we didn't have the same level of talent we had 2 years later.
so interesting. I forgot about that season too. But like the following season, I remember they made a documentary about it's called Out of the Blue, and they talked about it because it must have been the next year for you, right? Where I think it was like you guys either finished 8-4, 9-4, or something, and you got lost to Boston College in the
Yep.
the bowl game at Boise State. I was at that game. I left early. It's the only game I've ever
Oh,
left early for. And
bad memories.
it was a
Oh,
brutal one, but I want to know about that because you guys had a team that had a lot of upside. There was a lot of because of the previous year, you guys did so well, barely lost to Louisville on the road in Louisville in the bowl game. It was
yeah.
like there was so much hype. And then to go into we would consider it a pretty disappointing season and losing to Boston College in the bowl game. I believe Matt Ryan was playing. If I'm
Yep.
not mistaken, that was
He
Matt
was.
Ryan.
He was. And four of their starting five offensive linemen played in the league. That was the best. That Boston College offensive line was the best offensive line I ever played against at Boise State.
See, that's what's crazy. And didn't they have a defensive lineman as well? That was the DN. That was the big.
Yeah,
What was his
they
name?
did.
Can't
Yeah,
remember.
they were stacked.
Yeah, they were nasty, dude. And you guys made a comeback, lost, but I want to know about that turnaround because maybe it was a coaching change, maybe it was a culture change, so to speak. I just want to know from your perspective, being in it, the day-to-day grind of going into that. You guys had a season; it was disappointing, and then coming back into the offseason to then have such a historic year that next year against Oklahoma, when the BCS game, yada, yada, yada. What changed in the locker room? What changed from a cultural standpoint for you guys to actually just pick your heads back up and get back to the grind?
And this is exciting. I get to talk about this. I don't get to talk about this stuff very often. So that's such a great question. And here's how I would answer it: is I would say that we kind of, my sophomore year, also, let's put this in perspective. Boise State, when you lose 4 or 5 games, it's like everyone's on suicide watch, and the program's a total failure. We got booed 5 times in our own stadium that year. Like, we found out real quick that the idea is to win every single game, and that's the expectation that we set too. But this is what I would say is that we were just like wound too tight that year, and we had forgotten. And I hate to blame them, but they are the leaders. Like, the coaching staff had really just kind of forgotten what got us there in the first place. And they just kind of they wanted to double down on the grind and double down on working harder and double down on putting in more hours and double it down on caring more. And they forgot this like secret ingredient that every winning program has, which is like, yeah, you work your ass off, you outwork everyone, you put in the work, you put in the hours, you put in the prep. But the reason you do that is so that when you go out there on game day, you can cut it loose and have fun and play fast and play loose and just know that you put the work in, and now you're there for the fun part. Like football practice is not fun. It's not. It's work. It is a hell of a lot of work. It is not fun. We always used to sit in the locker room in between practices at Boise State during 2 days and say, look at each other and say, why the hell did we all quit playing baseball? We should have quit. We should have just kept playing baseball. Like this is fucking miserable. It's 125 degrees on the blacktop on the turf. A lot of people don't know that that field turf is just ground up tractor tires that forms the base of it. And we used to have black cleats, and you dump water on your feet every time you stop for a water break because your feet were boiling, and you get heat blisters. Like football practice is not fun. Games are fun, but the coaches were so that year started with us going to Georgia and getting our asses kicked. And the coaches were so in their own head about that game. I'll give you a couple of examples. So they've put a song together that was like Georgia fans taunting us. And it was that old school song that's like, Georgia, Georgia, Georgia on my mind, that song.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then they dubbed in like all this like fans talking shit about us. They played that song during fall camp on the way out to practice, every single practice for like 35 practices during fall camp. And like the whole season and the whole off season was about Georgia. And it stopped being about Boise State and it started being about Georgia. And the whole thing prior to that was us. Like the Boise State way was focus on us, don't focus on the opponent. Get better than we were yesterday. Get better than we were yesterday. And then all of a sudden it was like the whole culture shifted and it was all about Georgia. And then they just started doing like, I'm sorry, but this is just the truth. They just started doing some stupid shit. Like decks. Like everybody knows that Boise State football knows that like we run those steep ass upper decks throughout like the summer program. And that year we had worked up to running like a school record, which was like 25 decks the last day that we did it. And I still remember Coach Pitt, who's just like a Boise State legend. He was our strength and conditioning coach that would put us through all these hellish workouts. Although I have to say that the stuff that Mike Glenn did to us at Eagle High was worse. Pitt would never. If Pitt hears this, he's going to call me and cuss me out. But it's the truth because Mike Glenn was a psychopath when it came to how hard we worked. But I still remember Pitt getting us together before we ran 24 decks, and he was like, "No, listen." He had this voice. He's like, "No, listen. I pride myself on never asking you guys to do anything I've never done myself, but I ain't never run fucking 24 decks." So he's like, if you're gonna die, just stop. But then, we go into fall camp, right? And we're practicing. Well, Hawk gets this idea that he's going to have us run decks during practice. So now we're out there in the summertime. It's 110 degrees. We're in the middle of our second practice of the day in the afternoon. And we got to go up into the bleachers and run 6 decks in the middle of practice right before right before we do inside run. And inside run is like a full scrimmage, but only the front 7 and the offensive line and running backs. You're just smashing into each other doing run drills. And Hawkins gives us this big speech right before we go up there to run decks, like, this better not slow practice down. This better not interfere with practice. And there was some coaches that, and I didn't learn this until years later, but this was a huge fight that they had during meetings when they were doing the practice plan. And some of the coaches were like, "Hey, this is fucking stupid. Like, you're going to get somebody hurt. Somebody's going to blow their ACL. You can't ask these guys to go do that and then scrimmage 5 minutes later." And that was Hawk wanted to do it. And this is what I mean when I say like they just doubled down on like work harder, work harder, work harder. And they were obsessed with Georgia. So we go into Georgia. Zabransky turns the ball over 6 times, was totally in his head. But the coaches were kind of in his head too. Like when I look back, everybody blames Z, but when I look back on that season, it wasn't his fault. Like the expectations that everybody put on him, and when I say everybody, I mean the coaching staff. So that's what happened that whole year is like we couldn't get out of our own way. We were all, and then that set the tone for the whole season. And then we go to Oregon State the next week, and we had those guys dead to rights. We were up the entire fucking game, and then somehow like they pull out some miracle, and Oregon State wins that game. They were in the middle of their stadium remodel. It was this giant thunderstorm, hailstorm. Anyways, they went. So now we're 0-2, and then that whole year was just like, behind the 8 ball. Like
I thinking about that too. I remember that even the Oregon State game had like a controversial ending. Quarterback was trying to sneak it on a fourth down, got hit,
yeah,
fumbled it. They called his forward progress down. It was such bull
Yep.
crap, dude.
Yep. I forgot about that until you said that, but yeah. So game we should have won, but so now we're 0-2, and everybody's, Boise State sucks. They never should have played the big boys. They just need to stay home and play Idaho. They don't belong in the big leagues, and we kind of got shoved right back down into that. But that year, a couple things happened. Number one is there was a lot of us looking at each other in the locker room like, this is fucking never happening again. This is embarrassing. We're getting booed in our stadium. The Boston College debacle. I mean, we should, the defense throws a shutout in the second half, score a special teams touchdown. Like we get 1st and goal on like the 5-yard line with a minute and a half to go. I mean, it's like we got it. Like we're gonna fucking win. And then what happens? Like fucking Zabransky throws another interception. But that's an important part of the story because Z, and if he's listening to this, like he remembers this. I told him in the locker room after we beat Oklahoma, I said, dude, you're a fucking stud. Like I have so much respect for you because based on what happened to him the year before, when he threw that pick against Oklahoma at the end of the game, it's 1 in a million people that would have the mental fortitude to even go back on the field after that and throw another ball. Like,
oh yeah.
Like the setup going into it was just like, oh, here we go again. Like this is the same shit. And so I give him all the credit in the world. And I told him this in the locker room after the game. I said, you've got my respect for the rest of your life for what you did, because most people, would just bag it and quit. And he didn't.
I give him a lot of credit too, because I gave him a lot of crap myself as a fan, as a fan. So like I was one of those guys, but I would love to get him on the show to kind of actually learn about his story. I've always been intrigued by that. But that whole season, like you were mentioning, that season seemed like it was just kind of like a unfortunate course of events. Started with that Georgia game. So from the outside looking in, it was tough. It's tough to watch because you knew how talented you guys were. But in that documentary, I remember the Out of the Blue documentary that came out. My buddy Mick Luce was
Yeah.
So Mick was on there and he was quoted by saying like, F that, we're going undefeated or something like that. And he's like, so it's similar to what you were just saying of like, you guys were always like, okay, no, this isn't happening again. Come back with a vengeance. New coaching staff, obviously. Well, new head coach, obviously.
Well, and so I want to finish that because that was a huge part of it. So what you had guys that were way more talented what their record showed in 05. We were all pissed off and had a giant chip on our shoulder more than ever before. And then we got a breath of fresh air with a new coaching staff and that was needed. That coaching staff had been there and they had their run, and their message was getting old. It was getting stale. They were losing touch with what the players needed, what the players wanted. And we were like it was a perfect storm for Coach Pete's more positive, more upbeat, energetic, new energy. It was just a perfect storm. Like as soon as that coaching staff change happened, everything, like the locker room was totally different. It was just like you flipped a light switch. Like all of a sudden, it's almost like you take an NFL, like in the NFL, like they don't grind guys down. They don't beat guys up. Like they're constantly trying to like build guys up, take care of their bodies, make sure they're ready for game day, keep them fast, keep them loose. And that's kind of how Coach Pete approached things, which was perfect for us because we already were grinders. We already had the shit kicked out of us. We already put our time in. And the starters that was the other thing I always tell people is like, the starting 22 that beat Oklahoma, there was only like 2 players on that starting group that was different from the year before. So you take like basically the same group of guys, lose 5 games and get booed out of their own stadium to being undefeated, one of the best teams in program history, ranked number 3, beating OU.
It's so cool to me, man. It's very nostalgic because my freshman year at Boise State was the year you guys beat Oklahoma. And so it was just cool for me being a student there. And then also like just being part of that, like the whole run. Sometimes the energy needs to change. The culture needs to change. Sometimes it needs to be a change of the guard, a changing of the guard up
Totally.
with the leadership. And it sounds like it was like what you just said was perfect, like the perfect storm. Now that season, that game, the BCS game, against Oklahoma. Talk to me about that atmosphere, though. I mean, you've been in some big games. You went to Georgia. You've been in some big games throughout your career up until that point. That game, as a fan being there, is still one of my favorite games of all time, just because it was the first of its kind for us in this program. And so, like, just being there is like I just experiencing it all was just different for me. But when like one of the things that gives me goosebumps still to this day is like I see you guys walking. I remember seeing it on the big jumbotron, Nick, when like the helmets are like they got you in the tunnel and you guys are like nodding your heads, you're ready to come out there, you're getting pumped up. And I remember just being like, okay, we're ready for this. Like these guys are ready for this. And I was like, and then you guys run out and I'm like, okay, they're ready. Talk to me about the atmosphere though, like the whole buildup. Was it everything it's made out to be?
It is. Yeah. I mean, what I would say is our coaching staff and Coach Pete and all of our coaches from Justin Wilcox was our D coordinator and Kwiatkowski was our D line coach and a great offensive coach. Like they had done such a good job of isolating us from a lot of the drama. And you got to remember, like this is like pre-social media, dude, and like it wasn't that stuff was starting to kind of come out, but nobody paid any attention to it. And the coaches were still able to really like control the narrative, and they were able to like keep guys focused on the here and the now and kind of away from some of that noise.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the like if you're the starting quarterback or if you're a starting running back or you're an all-star, if you're Corey Hall, like a defensive guy or Gerald Alexander, like, yeah, like those guys are in the press all the time. Like they're more exposed to it. But for the most part, as a team, we were truly like everyone thought it was just coach speak and it was bullshit, but we were truly just focused on us and getting better and like putting one foot in front of the other. And we had the confidence. This might sound weird, but when we played at Georgia, the most frustrating part of that game was that physically we felt like we matched up. I remember saying that in the second and third quarter of that game. Like, if we would just fucking stop turning the ball over, we would actually have a chance to compete down here. Like it was not the kind of thing where you step on the field and you're just like blowing off the ball and like guys are just kicking your ass and they're carrying you. Like, no, like it was like we can hang with these guys. Like these guys are not superhuman. And then we go to Oregon State and should have had them beat in their stadium. And then we play freaking Matt Ryan and Boston College and should have had them beat. So we had played, and the Louisville thing, like we had played enough great teams that like we knew that our starting 11 could hang with them. Like we really did know that. That wasn't a secret. And Bob Stoops knew that. Like a lot of the people that were paying attention to that game that really knew what was up with us the people that knew how many games our team had won and how experienced our group was, like they knew it wasn't going to be a blowout. They did. And we were working so much harder. We had some really funny like spies basically going in between practices, and I'm not going to out them because some of them are still in coaching, but there was people that were going in between like the OU practice and coming to ours when we were prepping for that game, and we were licking our chops because I'll tell you what, man, we were going full speed in bull prep. We were full speed, full pad jack, like tackling. And we had people coming back that were watching the Oklahoma practices saying like, yeah, these guys are dancing around in shorts and helmets. Like they're not even taking this serious. They're not even practicing.
Wow.
And so like we knew going into it that we were going to hit them in the mouth, and we knew that we were going to catch them by surprise. And the question always was like, can you hang with them for 4 quarters? And that's in the fourth quarter of that game. You saw in real time and this is so interesting because college football has changed so much, but in that time, our starting 11 could hang with anybody in the country. The problem is we didn't have any depth.
Yeah.
So then you start seeing in the third and fourth quarter of that game that fatigue. Dude, I've never been more tired in my entire life than I was in the fourth quarter of that game. We on defense, we had over 70 snaps. And having 70 snaps as a defensive lineman is unheard of in major college football. Those guys rotate out. They play 25, 30 snaps a game, 45 max. But I don't throw up. Like I've been through some insane workouts in my life. I can count on 3 fingers the amount of times I've ever thrown up. And one of them was in the fourth quarter of that game. I puked my guts out of the sideline. I was fucking exhausted
Really,
because
man.
we had no depth. And that's why Coach Pete went for 2. That's like, because he knew we were gassed. Like the first play of overtime, freaking Adrian Peterson rips off a 25-yard run for a touch. I don't think any of us even came close to freaking touching him. And previously, that we had him bottled up the whole game, but we were gassed. Like we were just done.
Yeah, it's so interesting hearing that from a player's perspective. Yeah, you guys punched him in the mouth, and it was the whole fourth quarter you started to see, and the momentum shifted. It didn't help, the punt touching the dude's foot, like a couple momentum shifters.
Dude, I gotta tell you, dude, that happened in practice. So this is the craziest thing. The same thing happened to the same guy the last week we were practicing in Boise before we got down to Scottsdale and Glendale on the plains. It was a punt return drill, and the guy didn't get away from the ball, and it bounced off his. I'm not shitting you. The same thing happened to that guy in practice 3 weeks earlier, and we were all just like, "How is this happening? Like, how is this? How did you not learn your lesson, or why is he still on the field?" But that was like the craziest deja vu moment. And yeah, like that's sports, right? I mean, everybody loves the story because of the drama. As a player, and you probably as a student and as a fan, I would have rather the game just ended the way it had gone for 3 quarters and we would have just won by a couple scores. But I guess it made a better story. I don't know.
It made a much better story, dude. One of the best experiences of my life. But it took me a minute there to get like being from like lividly pissed off to being like the happiest I've been in ages. So on those teams, I know that, you play on the defensive side of the ball, Nick. Just can you tell us like one teammate? I think Gerald Alexander was there. Corey Hall was there. Some big names that like ended up playing in the next level. Was there a specific teammate though, maybe not them, that you competed with that stands out to you for being a great teammate and maybe something that they displayed? What was one of their leadership skills that stood out to you?
I honestly don't know if I could pick one. I as a D lineman, I'm always bashing heads with those my counterparts on the O line. As much as I hate and love those guys at the same time. So we just had some of the best offensive linemen. I played against Darren College. I played against Ryan Clady. I played against Jeff and Pete Cavender, the Cavender brothers. I played against Tad Miller. I played against Andrew Woodruff, who played in Canada for like 10 years. I think he won a couple Grey Cups up there. I played against every day in practice guys that were freaking monsters, and I'm forgetting some and leaving some out on that list. So those guys were all studs that I got so much better playing against them every day. And all the guys I played with on the D line. Andrew Browning was always a guy I looked up to. Just total stud. Mike T. Williams is a guy I played with. He works with me today. Mike T. is one of my agents, which is just so cool, to get to work with him, and played with him for 4 years, and all these guys that I played with. But yeah, Corey Hall was a leader, and we always looked up to Corey. I looked up to Andy, and Andy was there. He was a senior when I was a freshman. Great leader on our defense. Corey kind of took the mantle from him as the leader of our defense, and I stepped up and did a lot of that after Corey left. But I played with Kyle Wilson. I played with Orlando Scandrick. I played with Gerald Alexander, Colt Brooks, Corey Hall. We had some animals. That's the one thing I always remind people about that Fiesta Bowl team. And again, going back to like Coach Stoops and the people who knew what they were up against. Dude, we had a ton of guys on that roster playing the league.
Oh yeah,
that was not Little Sisters of the Poor Boise State out there. Like we had a ton of guys on that roster playing the league.
That's crazy. Yeah, it was a full NFL squad essentially on the back end, dude. That's crazy. Yeah, and even on the offensive line, my gosh, dude, the names you just mentioned. Now, Nick, when it came time, I mean, obviously the next year there were some big games throughout that year too. There was a Washington game, there's a Hawaii game, there's some big games there. But I'm curious, like when it was time for you to be done with the college game, you mentioned you tried it for the professional side. Talk to us about the experience of it, attempting it at least, and going for something. And how that's like, I guess how that transition happened and when you went to the next steps of your professional career.
Yeah, it was a weird journey. I mean, I'll start with the short story first, and then give you a little bit of color. I mean, the short story is that um, I was first team all conference my senior year. Started 3 years, was a 4-year letter winner. Was I knew that I was kind of a tweener in terms of I played most of my time outside on D end. I played some time inside of D tackle. I was basically not fast enough to play defensive end in the NFL and not big enough to play inside and play defensive tackle. And that was kind of my curse that led to me not making a go of it at the next level. So, but having said that, I mean, it was pretty surprising. I didn't even get an opportunity. Like, getting an agent, and then I went down to Denver and I trained down there to prep for my pro day. I trained with a guy named Lauren Lando. Lauren's actually the strength and conditioning coach at Fighting Irish at Notre Dame now.
Oh, wow.
And Lauren, Lauren's a stud. Lauren's a guy that was an unknown, I think, for a long time in the strength and conditioning world in like football. But he trained like a lot of UFC guys. He trained a lot of Olympians. He trained a lot of like University of Colorado sports program guys. He worked at Steadman Hawkins, which is a really good strength and conditioning clinic down in Denver. I heard about him through my agent, went down there and trained with him. He made a huge difference with me in just like 8 or 9 weeks. I went down there and lived with a friend of the family, which was awkward as hell. I'd never even met these people before, and they were gracious enough to let me into their home. I lived with them south of Denver for like 2 months while I was training with Lauren. But yeah, I wish I would have met Lauren earlier. Quite frankly, he made a huge difference in my agility and my explosion. So going into my pro day, I mean, I was on several teams' draft boards. I was predicted as either a late round pick, but if nothing else, like it was almost a for sure deal that I would get into a camp as a free agent, if nothing else. Did my pro day, and it was no surprise really. Like my 40 sucked. I ran like the worst 40 in my entire career. It was like 5 flat, and that killed me, But all of my other numbers, dude, I bench pressed 225 26 times my pro day. I was 270 pounds. My vertical was like 34 inches. My broad jump was almost 11 feet. My explosive numbers were great. I have an anchor that hooks onto me between yard 20 and yard 40. like, like I could get out of the blocks. My 10 and 20 was good, but I had no top end. And the reality was then and is even more so now. Like if you're going to play outside in the NFL, I mean, those guys are asked to stand up and cover running backs coming out of the backfield. They got to be able to run 4.5, 4.6 40s, and I just didn't have it. And to play inside, they would have wanted me to be at least 20 pounds heavier. And so, but even after, I mean, I still remember a couple of the scouts talking to me after my 40. They were like, "Listen, we didn't even time you. We know your 40 is not great. We've got 4 years of tape on you. You're an animal. You've got 120 or 30 tackles or whatever it is, and huge production. Like you're gonna get in a camp. Don't worry about your fucking 40." Which made me feel better right up until the point where draft day came and I didn't get a single phone call and I didn't get in a camp. And it was like, I mean, I can't even describe it. It was the most depressing, destructive, a career, like identity crushing moment slash I didn't get over it for 10 years. I really didn't. Like I had nightmares. I had recurring nightmares that like I was getting ready to play a game and I would wake up right before kickoff. I had nightmares like that for 15 years. And football was my life. Football was my identity. It's all I ever wanted to do from the age of 7. All I ever wanted to do was play in the NFL. Like it's why I played with broken foot. It's why I played with shoulder surgery It's why I played with multiple concussions. It's why I played with torn labrums. It's why I played with jacked up, broken bones in my fingers and my wrists. And like, I did a lot to not redshirt and play 3.5, 4 years straight at Boise State, and not. I only missed one game with a torn hamstring, and it was everything to me. And it just didn't happen. It was one of those things. It's like I didn't get any opportunities. I didn't get in any camps. Um, Blamed a lot of people. Blamed God. Actually destroyed my relationship with the Lord for about 15 years of my life. And I was in a black spot for a long time, and barely, if I'm honest with you, barely made it out of it alive. Um, and it was, yeah, just so destructive to lose my dream, my identity. you know, at the same time, now that I'm looking back on it as a 40-year-old, and I have, the almost 20 years of hindsight, I can't believe it's been that long. Not playing in the NFL probably saved my life. I was getting a lot of concussions, a lot, and nobody was talking about this back then.
Right.
This was not a thing. It was not something that people cared about or discussed. Guys were getting like major concussions and playing in practice 2 days later and suiting up the next week. It was routine. We didn't even think about it. I had a game my senior year. I had a game my senior year in Mexico where I got knocked unconscious twice in one game.
Wow.
And the damage was stacking up, and I had a lot of emotional problems and a lot of psychological issues that I was dealing with. Was that one of the reasons I didn't get into camp? I don't know. Was was God looking out for me? I think absolutely. Because the road that I was headed down, with how obsessive I was about the game and how much damage my body was taking and what I was willing to play with, it was not good. It was not healthy, and it wasn't going in a good direction. So it was like the destruction of my life and my ego and my identity, but I think it also saved me in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah.
I wasn't able to look at that positive aspect of it, though, if I'm real with you, for 10 years at least.
Well, I can understand that. And having talked to hundreds of former athletes, current athletes, and so forth through the last 9 years, I've heard similar things. So, Nick, I actually appreciate you being honest about that, because there are so many people that go through something similar and they almost feel like secluded and they feel alone, because they're like, well, no, there's people that don't really care about sports, that don't understand the impact it has on your identity, the stuff, the blood, sweat, and tears, the injuries you play through, the things like that, the sacrifices you actually make physically, emotionally, mentally, everything throughout your whole life up until that point, I guess. And so they don't understand how to overcome that. I know you mentioned you kind of lost your relationship with the Lord. You were mad at God for a long time. There were you couldn't get recurring nightmares and so forth. But if you look back, is there anything that like your supporting cast did or that you did that kind of got you through the tough times, I guess, that you can remember? Is there like, because there are probably people suffering from that exact same thing, trying to figure out their identity after sport.
Yeah, I would have to say that emotionally I was on autopilot for 5 or 6 years after ball, for sure. But one of the things I was able to lean back on was my success and my passion for academics, my all the things I learned from my professors at Boise State, from my coaches at Boise State. Had some great coaches. And what I said earlier about, Dan Hawkins and his staff, they were great coaches. Their time was just up. And they taught me incredible things, and the coaches that came after them did. My Optimist football coaches, my teachers in high school, like I was able to I was so lucky because I was getting so many great life lessons while I was learning how to play football. And I think that's one of the brilliant things about sports is like if you really do, absorb it and care about it and try and you learn what these people are trying to teach you, it absolutely sets you up for life in terms of some habits and some knowledge and understanding how to learn and how to adapt and get through tough times. So that's the irony, is like it kind of put me in this dark hole, but it also gave me the tools to get out of it. And even though I was emotionally dead for years, I learned so much about how to learn, how to win, how to surround yourself with winners, how to spot opportunity, what a winning culture feels like. Boise Fire. So I got this idea a year after I got done playing. Boise Fire was hiring. I had these wonderful coaches when I was a kid that were firefighters, and I always kind of had this idea in the back of my head, like, yeah, it'd be a cool job someday, even though it's not what I want to do. I want to play football, and we're gonna play football forever, right? That's what we think. So I heard that, so they're hiring. Well, so I go test. Well, dude, think about all my years in academics and all my years of learning how to take tests. Like there was 1,200 guys testing for 12 spots, and I got a 96% on the written test, which was high enough to get me to the next phase of the process, which was an oral board. Well, because of all my years in sports and academics, like I knew how to prep for things. I knew how to prep for tests. I knew how to prep for games. I knew how to do my homework. So I started doing ride-alongs with all these guys at Boise Fire, and I eventually found some guys that were willing to help me do practice oral boards and practice oral interviews. And this is where a whole other phase of like these great men and great mentors in my life come in, because one of them was a guy named Terry Terrio, who was a captain at the time. And it just so happened that like Terry was willing to let his crew give me these practice oral boards, which is basically just these guys grilling you for an hour and a half. Well, it turned out that like Terry spent like 7 years on the hiring committee, and he knew
Ah,
like and he knew like every single question that they were going to ask me, he asked me. So when I took my oral interview with Boise Fire, they only asked me one question that I hadn't already been asked a dozen times. So I was the only candidate at 1,200 that got a perfect score on his oral board. I was hired number one in my class at Boise Fire, and
wow.
got and that gave me something to live for. It gave me a new identity. It was a team, and fighting fire was, dude, fighting fire is the friggin' best thing I ever done in my life besides play college football. It's an awesome job. Now, I didn't wind up sticking with it permanently because you don't get to do a lot of it, unfortunately, as a firefighter, which sounds kind of weird. But 80% of the job is like medical. But what I'm saying to you is that even though I was emotionally dead for years, I had habits and skills and resources that pushed me forward to the next phase of my life. And my parents taught me never to quit, and my parents taught me how to just work. That's all I knew, is like just work. The summer after I didn't get into any camps, I was working for a commercial concrete company here in Boise and mowing lawns and working 15 hours a day until I was so tired I would just pass out because I didn't know what else to do. Like I was so traumatized, but I knew how to work. And
Yeah.
that's from my parents. My parents and then all my coaches, I mean, taught me how to work, but it really came initially from my mother and father. So that was the irony, is like I was in this hole, but what got me there is also what got me out in terms of the skills and the background and just the willingness to keep going.
You know what, Nick? That's so cool. That is so awesome. How you just kept going. You're still here. That's the biggest piece of all of it, because you said you almost weren't. So the fact that you have those habits that you build, I hope everyone who listens to this is taking note on that right now. I think we could all take it, whether you play football or not, whatever it is in your life. If you've hit a spot where maybe you're in a depression cycle because of one thing or another, your habits and everything, lean back on those things that you've learned and use that to your advantage. Um,
Yeah, because you
now,
because you don't always feel like it, and I'll say that you don't always feel like it. You just have to trust that eventually it's going to get better. And I've had that conversation with some guys that are really struggling that I were former teammates of mine. And I don't want to get into too many details, but I've had some pretty urgent, time sensitive conversation with some guys that were in a dark spot in their life in just the last few years. And one of the things that I've leaned on is like they've asked me like, what's the point? Like, why get through it? Why try? Like, why grind through this? It's so miserable. And I've said to them, I'll tell you what, here's one reason why. Because if I wouldn't have, you'd be talking to an empty telephone right now. And you don't know when you're going to have the opportunity to get on the phone with somebody or put your arm around somebody who's struggling and help them and use your experiences to help them. But you just have to believe that it's going to get better and that a new day will come and that a new dawn will rise.
I love that, man. So as you look at your career now, Nick, as you're doing what you're doing now, talk to us about that. You've had habits, all these things, the work ethic, the mentality of just pushing through, hard work from your parents, all of those things into your career now. Talk to us about what you're doing now, almost 20 years post football career, and how that still applies to this today.
Well, yeah, and as I got into the fire service, and the fire service was amazing. Ultimately, I was raised by entrepreneurs. My parents were entrepreneurs. My dad was a contractor, a builder, a brilliant man in a lot of ways. He dropped out of engineering school, but he would have been a great engineer. He was a great builder, worked on cars. My dad could fix anything, but he was an entrepreneur, and so was my mom. And that I've always said, like, when you're raised that way, it never really leaves you. It kind of gets in your blood. And that was one of the biggest things that caused me to leave the fire department is I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to start my own business. And it was in real estate because I got my real estate license in 2010, 2 years into being a firefighter. Because, like, let's face it, I don't do good with time off. I got to stay busy. So my days off, I got to find something to do. I'm not much of a hobby guy. As much as I love climbing and I love hunting and fishing and all that stuff, like, I needed another job. So I started selling real estate. I got my license in 2010. And that's like, I really started, as weird as it might sound, like, that's really when I started emotionally kind of waking up again. Like, I was pretty dead emotionally until I got into real estate. And then something about that entrepreneurial spirit that was in me from childhood kind of woke up and it was like, yeah, like, I remember this. Like, this is something I can identify with. I can run with this for the rest of my life. Like, I can lean into being an entrepreneur. And I wanted to build something and I wanted to use my brain instead of my back. That was one of the things I always said is, like, as a firefighter, man, firefighting is tough. It's hard work. Like, it's
Mhm.
manual labor. Like, you get on a fire scene, it is a freaking blue collar manual labor job. Um, it's kind of like glorified blue collar work in a lot of ways. It really is. And being a football player and working in construction with my dad and concrete crew, like, everything I'd ever done prior to real estate was making a living with my back instead of my brain. And I really wanted to figure out how to do it different and challenge myself to do it different. And I knew I was smart. I always got good grades, like I said, and I was kind of sick of being a dumb jock. Like, I had that. People might look at me and think that I never have to deal with bias, and I mean, it's such a bunch of bullshit. Like, we all do. I had the label of being a meathead jock my whole life.
Yeah.
That's what people thought about me. I was just some stupid jock, and then I was a stupid firefighter, and I was just like, everybody just thought I was a rockhead, and nobody thought. And I always resented that because I knew how smart I was, and some of my teachers knew how smart I was, like my freshman math teacher that had me teach his class. Like, and I wanted to lean into that and see what I could do. I wanted to build a team, man. That was something at Boise State I really got addicted to, is like building a team. And at Eagle High School with Mike Glenn, like, once you experience that, that's the hardest thing about leaving sports, is like leaving that team environment. And I kind of found it at the fire department a little bit, but it's different. It's very seniority based. It's very political. I mean, very political. I mean, you're a union member when you're a firefighter.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So I wanted to build my own team, my own culture. Got my license, started selling. I liked it. I thought, hey, I'm going to lean into this and I'm not just going to sell. I'm going to start my own brokerage. So I left the fire department November 1st of 2012 and I launched my brokerage the next summer in 2013. I launched Amherst Madison. So I was already selling for a couple years, kept selling to pay the bills, started growing a brokerage, recruiting, training, hiring. Man, did I have a lot to learn, and I learned a lot of it the hard way. It was a grind. Took 5 or 6 years before the brokerage itself actually made any money, and I just paid the bills selling. But brokerage became profitable in, like, 2017, 2018, and we've had a lot of success and a lot of growth. One of the reasons I got into real estate was I was also very interested in real estate development. So now, I have a president that I've hired and a broker that kind of run the brokerage. I'm still here every day. I'm in my office in the brokerage right now. It's not like I'm not here, but I spend a lot more time now in sales and development, and coaching and speaking and like doing stuff like this. I'm launching my own podcast right now.
Heck yeah.
Um, I'm getting a few episodes in the bank before we go live, but we should start pushing stuff out in February.
Heck yeah.
Um, I'm I'm going to be on stage at Inman News. Inman is a very large real estate industry news platform and very influential, and they do events around the country. I'm going to be on a panel at Inman News, Inman, New York City, here in a few weeks on February 3rd. I've got a book I'm going to be coming out with about how to build a successful real estate business as an agent. Basically, just taking everything that the sales methodology we've built here at the brokerage. So the brokerage we've taken from nothing to we sell over $1 billion a year in real estate. We have 180 agents, top 1/2 of 1%, top 1% company in the country in terms of volume sold. And so I'm writing a book, and there'll probably be others that come along after it about building a successful real estate career. But honestly, I'll tell you a light bulb moment for me relating back to sports. Getting into the brokerage, yeah, entrepreneurial spirit, check. Work hard, check. I know how to sell real estate. I can kind of teach other people how to do it. I learned about how to be a mentor in sports and at the fire department. But then I remember hitting this moment a couple years in of like, holy shit, what do I know about growing a culture? What do I know about growing a team? That is when, like, man, my Boise State years, they really did pay off because I finally sat back one day and I was like, what are you talking about? Like, you got like a freaking, doctorate degree in how to grow a culture and how to grow a team, playing for Chris Peterson and Dan Hawkins and Mike Glenn and all the championships I won in sports. I know exactly what a winning culture feels like. I know exactly what goes into building a winning culture. And so I just started pulling from that playbook. And that's when my brokerage really started to take off.
Wow. Man, Nick, that's so cool. It is so awesome to see like what you're doing now and what you're going to continue to do moving forward. Like, that's so sick. I'm looking forward to hearing your podcast. I'm looking forward to seeing your speaking engagements. And hopefully like we'll cross paths here, even on the professional front, like my professional career, I'm a marketing director. And so like, kind of like do that as my stuff. And so maybe we'll cross paths, man. Maybe there will be an event that I get to MC one day and you'll be a guest speaker there, like the keynote or something. Like, hopefully we can make something happen on that front, because I'm pretty inspired by what you've been able to do, man. I've been following your stuff, but I didn't know the inside story. And that's like what I wanted to do with this podcast, just learn the behind the scenes stuff of what's going on, what's built you to this point. Because from the general fan base, Nick, if I've known who you were since high school, just because I followed football, I never would have known the struggles. I would have just assumed like, oh no, dude, he's just successful because he played football. He's doing his thing. He has a good name in the Valley. Never would have thought of any of the stuff that was going on. So I really do appreciate you sharing that. So with that being said, what is the biggest life lesson football has taught you?
Never quit. Never give up, man. I get goosebumps. I get choked up just saying it. Like I say that, and like that never say die attitude got us into so many games and so many wins, but the reality of what it does is it gives you into a lot of doors in life you wouldn't get into. It gets you in a lot of games in life you wouldn't get into. It keeps you going during dark moments in your life when all you want to do is quit and you want to bag it and throw in the towel. It's a lesson for your marriage. I mean, marriage is tough. Let's talk about, you want to talk about relationships, like that, relationships. And I'm a dad, I got 2 kids, I got a wife, like that'll challenge you like nothing else. And the prescription is you just never, ever, ever quit. Um, Everything else you can figure out, everything else you can learn, but you can't, that's not you can't learn that. You've just got to gut it out and have the faith or the intestinal fortitude or the stubbornness. Like I've always told my agents, like, man, you just got to be like a cockroach sometimes. Like you got to hang around, man. Like you just got to hang around and stay in the game and stay in the game. And you would be freaking amazed what happened. Like that's the reason we won that Fiesta Bowl game, and everybody knows it. It's because we just stayed in that game and we refused to hang our heads. And Zabransky refused to hang his head. He refused to quit. He stayed in it and he freaking just kept throwing the ball. and everybody on that team did. And that's what I would say to you without any hesitation is never, ever, ever quit.
I appreciate the insights, man. I appreciate your time tonight, Nick, and sharing your wisdom with the rest of us. I hope everybody's enjoyed it. I hope everybody takes notes of this. And yeah, I just want to say thank you once again for joining me, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you having me. I was excited when you reached out. It's not often that I get to go back with another local boy and tell some of these stories. So it's pretty cool. I'm happy that you had me. Thank you.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. And for all those who are listening, make sure to hit the subscribe button. We'll be coming to you guys next week with another interview. But if you enjoyed this interview with Nick, leave us a review and let us know what you thought. Take care. Guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of my show. Now, if you could go and do me a favor, head over to iTunes, give me 5 stars, and leave me a review, it would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your support.